All right, welcome back. So, yeah, like what I said, I would do. I would just put that in a little table and copy and paste that into your Word section here when you're summarizing your data. That's an important thing to highlight. In fact, this information should be above the data if you choose to copy the data set in. Again, I don't think it's not a huge deal if you want to include it. I would not typically include it, but since we're dealing with a school environment instead of a work environment, it might be helpful to include. That's up to you, though. All right, so now we're going to go down to the scatter plot. So if we go back to Excel, remember we are looking at this median listing price and this square footage price. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight this, and we're going to highlight. Oops, helps if I highlight it correctly. Highlight this, and we're gonna say insert, and we're gonna come over here to these nice little pictures. See the little picture with the dots, like a scatter plot. Click on scatter, and look, we have our nice little scatter plot. Now, one thing I just noticed is that my X and Y got switched. I have a couple of options to fix this, which is a pretty common thing. You can either click switch row column, but you'll notice right there it looks kind of hideous. Well, that's because your scale is off now, right? So when you go in there, you can go to add chart element and go to more axis options and change the scale. The other option is to select data right here. So you can actually just swap out these values. So see how it's got X values here and Y values here? You can actually just swap this out to say X values and come over here, up here. Oops, that's the X values here. And then you can come over here and for Y values, just select that. I think that's slightly easier. Click OK. Oh, our scales are still off. So let's go ahead and go to axes, more axis options. We're going to say for square footage, our lower should be what? Let's see. Let's say, is there anything less than, I think 1,000 to, let's say 3,000. Let's see if that covers everything. That looks a little bit better. We could probably even up this to, let's say, 1,400. Do you see what I'm doing here? So what I'm doing is I'm adjusting the x-axis here to better reflect the data so that it's not all scrunched up. And then it does a pretty good job of automatically selecting the y-axis once you do the x-axis. Okay, so now that we're able to see the table a little bit better, we're able to see that there is some kind of trend going up, right? And what I also recommend you do before you, especially if you're inserting this into a report, you would want to add in some kind of title. So what is this? This is median square footage versus median listing price. And you can, again, add in elements. You can add in axis titles. So you could do primary horizontal. You could say median square footage, and you can do the same thing for your y-axis. Primary vertical, you could say median listing price. Anything like that makes it look a little bit better. You should never leave labels, axes unlabeled. I think it's extremely confusing. Always better to label than to not. So that would be the scatter plot section. So let's go back over here. So scatter plot. Now look at the pattern. It says based on your graph, define each variable and explain which variable will be useful for making predictions and why. Describe the association between X and Y in the scatter plot and determine its shape. Is it linear? Is it not linear? Do you see any outliers? And then it says if you had a 1,200 square foot house based on the regression equation in the graph, what would you choose to list at? Now remember, back at our assignment, it told us over here, so we had create a scatter plot, define X and Y, which variable is useful for making predictions. Is there an association between X and Y? Are they correlated? What do you see as the shape? Linear, nonlinear, we just said that. And then we need to come up with the regression line. So back over here, we go to data, and this is what I was talking about. There's a data analysis pack. You guys should have seen some instructions on how to install this, but if you haven't, let me know and I will show you. If you don't have this under your data tab, let me know. Don't struggle with it, or if you can't easily figure it out, let me know. If you click on your data analysis pack, you can click regression. You see here, there's a lot of options here for what we'll be covering this session also, but let's start with regression. And click OK. So here it tells you input your Y range, input your X range. So if we were to input our Y range, let's start with that. We've got here is our median listing price comp. So we're going to highlight all those variables, and then we're going to go over here for our X range, and that's the square footage. So I'm going to start here. It doesn't matter if you start at the bottom or the top. And we're going to click OK, and you see it created a new tab, and it's got all of our regression results. Here we go. And one other thing that I found very handy is if you go over here and you go into chart design and you go down to add chart element, and you can include your trend line. So this goes along with your linear regression. So see here, it shows us this trend line. And what you can also do is if you scroll down to trend line and go to more trend line options, you can include down here this display equation on chart and display R squared value on chart. And you will come back to here, sorry, exit out of here, and you can see it right here up in the corner. So these results here match what we see in our linear regression results here. The one thing you don't see is this nice pretty equation, but I'm going to show you. See how it says here your coefficients? This right here is your slope next to the X variable, and then this is your intercept. So what we would say then is that you have something like Y equals, let's say 200.76 X. I'm just writing this in here to show you, minus 16108.3.51. So that right there would be your linear regression equation. And you can, again, you can see it over here on your scatter plot. And I just think it's great to add it there. It's a good little visual. All right, so that then gives you everything you need. So that tells you can talk about the relationship. What's your correlation coefficient? Is it close to 1? Is it close to -1? Is it positive? Do I see a positive correlation and slope with these two variables? And then remember here, if you had a 1,200 square foot house, what would the price be based on this regression equation? That means you go back to your regression equation and you just plug in 1,200 for X and see what you get out for Y. All right, I hope that helps you guys. Again, what I'm looking for in this assignment is not for everything to be exactly perfect, like you include the right level of detail, although that's important. I want to see that you're thinking about the business needs and how to use this information to make some kind of interpretation or prediction, because that's what linear regression is. We're using the information we've known, a history of information we've known, to help make us make good predictions in the future. What I used to do at FICO, we did credit risk FICO scores, right? So what we're doing is we're using people's credit history to decide who's a good credit risk. That's how the FICO score works. The higher your score, the better your credit risk. The lower your score, the worse your credit risk. The less likelihood to repay your credit card, your loans, etc. They're using historical data to help make predictions in the future. So I hope that really helps some people. I think there was still a lot of confusion after even seeing some of the videos and questions, but if you have any questions about it, let me know. As you see, the more questions I get, that's great, because then I'm able to know where people are having problems and address it. So I hope this helps. Keep up the hard work and contact me with any questions.